Hi everyone, welcome back to the BKBH Sutra reading. And for today's episode, I'll be continuing with the Platform Sutra, chapter 9. For the past few days, we've been reading in order from chapter 1 to chapter 8. And it's been slowly building up the sutra towards the last two chapters, which is a little bit climactic, and it very nicely ties the whole sutra up very well. Just to give you a very quick briefing, because this is a very short chapter. Chapter 1 was basically building up the origins of Master Neng, the Sixth Patriarch, explaining about how he became the Sixth Patriarch in the first place and how he attained his sudden awakening. The second chapter was about prajñā, which is wisdom, and why it's so important, so fundamental to awakening to self-nature, because it's all about right view, the right understanding of how we should be perceiving the environment around. The third chapter was about questions. So Master Neng was using the wisdom that he was talking about to answer questions from the assembly, explaining the differences between blessings and merits, talking about the Pure Land practice, Amitabha Buddha, talking about the interchange that the first patriarch Bodhidharma had with Emperor Wu when Bodhidharma first arrived at China. So very interesting application of wisdom. Chapter 4 was about linking wisdom with meditation. So this is the first introduction we had to meditation, and also why this sutra, the Platform Sutra, is so heavily regarded in the Zen Buddhist tradition. Chapter 5 was then talking about seated meditation. There was a lot less focus on things external like body posture and the body and everything. Not even that much emphasis on the mind. It was just more right view. After that, chapter 6 was, I'm going to have to check. Yes, chapter 6 was about repentance. Very interesting. So not only the traditional repentance, but also remorse. Repentance is when you vow or you are repentful for the past wrong deeds, but then remorse is when you're showing a change for the future, a vow to not recommit those bad deeds. Then he talked about the four great vows, the 3 refuges, and so basically talking about how to become a fully committed Buddhist practitioner. Chapter 7 was talking about the encounters. This was a very long episode. This chapter took over 2 hours to record, and it was basically recounting all the encounters that Neng, the Sixth Patriarch, had with all the various people in his life. It started off with some students that still had a lot of development to do, a lot of development to make. So giving them guidance on how to practice correctly. Towards the end, there were more highly cultivated practitioners and their encounters with the Sixth Patriarch. So there was a great variety, a lot of mini stories, and they were all just as interesting as the previous. After that was chapter 8. So the last chapter was talking about gradual versus sudden. So making a contrast between Shen Zui, which was a monk that was supposed to have gotten the Sixth Patriarch transmission, but his famous 4-verse line on the wall in chapter 1 was then rebuked by Neng's 4-line verse, which clearly showed to the 5th Patriarch at the time that Neng knew self-nature. So this is a very interesting chapter that contrasts the difference between sudden teaching and gradual teaching. And so again, why this sutra is so highly regarded in the Zen Buddhist practice, because they talk about just instant enlightenment and how to attain that sudden awakening right now without having to go through the lifetimes upon lifetimes of practice. Now, today, we are up to chapter 9, and we are going to be talking about proclamations. So in this chapter, this is a pretty serious chapter from Neng, the sixth patriarch, talking a lot more seriously about the practice and about right view and the right way to perceive the practice. So let's just get straight into it, and then I'll provide the commentary as always. Chapter 9, Proclamations. On the 15th day of the first month of the first year of the Shenlong, which is divine dragon period, the period of Empress Wu, Zetian and Emperor Zhongzong issued a proclamation that said, "We have invited two masters, Shen Zui and Lao An, to the palace to receive our blessings, with the suggestion that the occasion of 10,000 possibilities always reaches its ultimate in the single vehicle." The single vehicle being the Buddha path, the Buddha vehicle. The two masters demurred, saying, "In the south there is a Chan master, Neng, the sixth patriarch, who has intimately received the bow and dharma from the great master Hongren." Hongren is the fifth patriarch. His transmission of the mind seal of the Buddha, he transmits the mind seal of the Buddha, and you should invite and inquire to the capital. The master memorialized to the throne, excusing himself on account of illness and saying, "I wish to live out my life in the forests." I didn't want to go to the celebration to receive offerings. Xie Jian said, "The virtuous Chan monks of the capital all say, if you wish to understand the way, you must sit in meditation and cultivate samadhi. It has never happened that anyone attained emancipation without relying on meditation. I wonder, what is the dharma that you teach?" So he's asking about the dharma that Huineng, the sixth patriarch, teaches, and how relevant is meditation with his teaching. So he responds saying, "The master said, one is enlightened to the way through the mind. How could it depend on sitting? A sutra says, to say that the Tathagata sits or lies down is to practice a false path. Why? Because he is without coming and without going. To be without birth and without extinction is the pure meditation of the Tathagata. For the dharmas to be quiescent is the Tathagata's pure sitting. Ultimately, there is no realization, so how could it possibly depend on sitting?" So here, the master is, when he's referring to the meditation practice of the Buddha, which is Tathagata, Tathagata is another epithet for Buddha. His definition of meditation is to be without birth and death, to be without coming and going, and that is the definition of meditation. Meditation, according to him, is not just sitting upright, because how does that allow one to be enlightened to the way through the mind? Then he says something that's very interesting, saying, ultimately, there is no realization. So how could it possibly depend on sitting? The reason why, my understanding is the reason why he says that there is no realization is because there is no concept, there is no dharma that can be attained. And that is why there is no realization that can be truly attained to say this is enlightenment, this is Buddha path, this. It's always trying to transcend the idea of dualistic concepts, transcend the boundaries of phenomena and dharma. And so to say that ultimately there is no concept, there is no realization. So what are we talking about? Why are we talking about depending on sitting meditation? To which Xie Jian said, when your disciple returns to the capital, my imperial master will ask me about you. Please, in your compassion, indicate for me the essentials of the mind, so I may transmit them to the two palaces and the students of the way in the capital. It would be like a single lamp shining, lighting 100 or 1,000 lamps. The darkness would become entirely bright, brilliant without limit. The master said, the way is without bright and dark. Bright and dark are complementary ideas. So even the brilliant without limit has a limit. This is because it depends on the positing of names and categories. The Vilamakirti Sutra says, the Dharma is without comparison because it is without mutuality. So this is very, very profound for many ways. Hui Neng right now is talking about how the way is without brightness and darkness. Because bright and dark are dualistic concepts. One gives rise to the other and they are mutually independent. You can't have good without bad because you're defining good against the bad, right? You can't have happy without sad because you are defining happiness against the sad. If you were to just have sadness being disappeared forever, happiness would have lost its definition as well. It wouldn't make sense to have something happy because without the sadness, because happy gives rise to sadness. They're in of each other. And so in Vilamakirti Sutra, they say that the Dharma, which is the way, the fundamental teaching, is without comparison because it is without mutuality. Mutuality just means things that are codependent, things that are dualistic in nature. And the Dharma is not a dualistic Dharma. It's not a dualistic concept. Xie Jian said, bright is a metaphor for wisdom and dark is a metaphor for the afflictions. If perchance students of the way do not use the illumination of wisdom to destroy the afflictions, how will they be able to escape beginningless samsara? So now he's going straight to the point. He's trying to argue what Hui Neng has said, saying that the way is without darkness and bright. And so Xie Jian is saying that bright is a metaphor for wisdom, and we need the brightness of the light of wisdom to dispel the darkness of afflictions. And if we don't have wisdom, how can we destroy the afflictions? Which is to say, how do we escape meaningless samsara? The master then says, the afflictions are bodhi. They are non-dual and not separate. If one tries to use the illumination of wisdom to destroy the afflictions, this is the interpretation of the two Hinayana vehicles held by those fit for the sheep and the D carts. Again, this is referencing the three vehicles from the Lotus Sutra, the three vehicles being the sheep cart, the D cart, and the white bull cart. The white bull cart being the Bodhisattva path, all those three leading to the one path being the Buddha path. So the lower carts are the sheep and the D cart for the inferior teaching. And so he's saying that if one tries to use the illumination of wisdom to destroy the afflictions, this is the interpretation of the inferior practice. So why does he say, so to continue on, he says, those of superior wisdom and Mahayana capabilities are completely different. So he's saying that afflictions are bodhi. They are non-dual and not separate. My understanding of this is because the same thing about talking about the dualistic nature of phenomena, you can't have good without bad. You can't have right without wrong. Same as bodhi and afflictions. We say that bodhi is the freedom of suffering. The liberation. You're liberating yourself from suffering. And so we talk about affliction and bodhi as opposite extremes. Bodhi is the absence of affliction, and affliction is the absence of bodhi. And so Master Hui Neng right now is saying that they are non-dual. They are one. They are not two separate concepts. You can't have affliction without bodhi, and you can't have bodhi without affliction. They are creating each other because they are mutually codependent concepts. So now Xie Qian is saying, what is the Mahayana interpretation? The Mahayana interpretation of the fundamental teaching of Buddhism. The master said, ordinary people see brightness and ignorance as different. The wise comprehend that they are non-dual in their nature. The dual nature is the true nature, and the true nature is present in the ordinary and stupid common people without decrease, and in the sages and wise without increase. One abides in the afflictions without disruption. One resides in meditation without serenity, not nihilistic, annihilationist, and not permanent, neither coming nor going, neither located in an intermediate location or in the internal and external, neither generated nor extinguished, permanently abiding without movement. This is called the way. So he's just basically summarized the entire teaching of the Mahayana in these following lines and sentences. He's saying that for ordinary people, they see duality, good and bad, right and wrong, brightness and ignorance, and they see them all as separate dualistic concepts. He's saying that the wise comprehend that they are non-dual in nature. They are not non-dual, just means that they are not separate concepts. The non-dual nature is the true nature. So the true nature of anything is that it is non-dual. It is not separate. So we talk about form and emptiness being non-dual. They are not opposing separate concepts. But that is the true nature of both of them, is that they are non-dual in nature. And the true nature, which is non-dual, is present in ordinary and stupid people, as well as in sages and wise people. So now continue on, he says, one abides in the afflictions without disruption, one resides in meditation without serenity. So if we're able to realize that affliction is none other than bodhi, then we can abide in affliction without being bound by it, because only within the affliction is there the potential for bodhi. Likewise, only within bodhi is there the potential of affliction. So if someone tries to realize bodhi, they must realize bodhi within affliction. One resides in meditation without serenity, because again, they are non-dual. Within meditation, there is the opposite, being not serene, without serenity. So in other words, affliction. And so within affliction, you can meditate, and within meditation, you can find the non-serenity. So this concept is not annihilationist and not permanent. It's neither coming nor going. It's neither located in an intermediate location nor in an internal and external location. It's neither generated nor extinguished. It's permanently abiding without movement, and this is called the way. Xie Qian said, how does your teaching of neither generation nor extinction differ from the heretical paths? So the false paths. So he says, the master said, when those of the heretical path preach neither generation nor extinction, they have extinction put a halt to generation, and generation reveal extinction. Their extinction seems like non-extinction, and their generation is explained by non-generation. Our explanation of neither generation nor extinction is that fundamentally there is no generation, and now there is no extinction. Therefore, it is different from the heretical paths. If you want to understand the essentials of the mind, you should simply not think about all the different types of good and evil. You will then naturally attain entry into the pure essence of the mind, which is peaceful and always serene, with wondrous functions as numerous as the sands of the Ganges River. Continuing on, when Xie Qian heard this teaching, he experienced a sudden expansive great enlightenment. After doing his obeisance, he went and returned to the palace and submitted a memorial relating the master's words. So this one is a bit complicated. I will try to explain. within my limited knowledge. So how is the Huineng's teaching of neither generation nor extinction different to the heretical paths that also preach neither generation nor extinction? And so he's saying that when the hereticals say that, they mean that they're using extinction to halt generation, and they're using generation to reveal extinction. So they're using one to counter the other. And so in that sense, they are still opposing each other and fighting each other. They are still against each other. So he's saying that their extinction seems like non-extinction, and that their generation is explained by non-generation. So you're using generation to fight off extinction. And so this extinction seems like it's not extinction, because it's still being fought against generation. And so he's saying that the way that he sees it, our explanation of neither generation nor extinction is that fundamentally there is no such thing as generation, and there isn't also, and now there is no extinction. So he's saying that within generation and extinction, it doesn't exist, and it only exists within these dualistic concepts. But once you go out and look from the outside, neither of them exist, because they have to exist together or not at all. If you have a better description for that or better explanation, please leave it in the comment section below. So now, continuing on the third day of the 9th month of that year, a proclamation was issued extolling the master. On account of age and illness, the master Huineng has declined our invitation, which was made so that we might cultivate the way. The master may be considered a field of blessings for the nation, just like Vimalakirti, who used his illness to teach the Mahayana in Vaisali. Vimalakirti has its own sutra, which is basically talking about the Bodhisattva path that's practiced by lay people, and how the potential of a Bodhisattva path transcends greatly that of the Arhat path. And so his wisdom, the Vimalakirti is a layperson that practiced the Bodhisattva path, and his wisdom is so great compared to all the Bodhisattvas and the Arhats of the assembly of Sakyamuni Buddha. So, and in that sutra, he uses illness as an opportunity to teach people about impermanence, to teach the assembly around him the Dharma. He transmits the mind of the Buddhas and discusses the non-dual Dharma. Xie has transmitted the master's instructions, which are the perpetual understanding of a Tathagata. We have accumulated an overabundance of auspicious good and have planted good roots in the past. Thus have we encountered the master's appearance in the world and the teaching of the superior vehicle of sudden enlightenment. Our gratitude to the master's good favor toward us is never-ending. Along with this were donations of a vestment, kasaya, which is the robe, of valuable Korean material, and a bowl made of crystal. An edict declared that the governor of Shaozhou should renovate the monastery, and the master's former residence was allowed to become Guansi, which is Guoensi, which is the monastery of the nation's gratitude. So I hope you like this episode on chapter 9 of the Platform Sutra. This one was once again a very, very serious teaching on the way, the path, and the right way to perceive the practice. If you like this chapter, as always, please leave a message in the comment section below. And I look forward to seeing you again in the final chapter, which is transmission. So this one will be very interesting and basically sums up the entire sutra in like it ties it up really well. This is the sutra that explains to the assembly, in the words of Neng, what everyone should do, because in this chapter, Neng announces that his final days have come, and so he leaves his final message to his assembly and disciples on how they should continue to practice without him by their side. It's a very strong reminder to the Nirvana Sutra, when the Buddha had to say the exact same words when he was approaching his final days. So very excited to move on to the final chapter, and then we can move on to the next sutra. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again next episode. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.